Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day when we called ourselves Movies We Like.
It took us a while to settle into the show's format, so you'll notice some differences as you listen to these episodes. For instance, it takes us a bit of time to actually get into the conversation about the movie. Things like that.
But we're still proud of the conversations about the movies themselves, and we think they're worth keeping in the library.
So enjoy these episodes from our back catalog. And you can become part of our Discord community, learn more about the show, and find out how you can become a supporting member at thenextreel.com.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show. Goodness.
Pete!
Hey, welcome back.
Here we are.
We are officially no longer on vacation.
No,
and
officially working like maniacs.
It was delightful. How are you?
I'm great.
As we record this, you have just been rescued from being stalled out in the desert. Would you like to share that story?
I don't know how fun it is.
Oh, I don't think it's ever really supposed to be fun.
Yeah, no, it's just production in the desert in the summer when it's 110 out. We've just been filming for a TV episode, and the picture vehicle, of course, broke down. the camper van, and so yeah, I got to stay out there a few extra hours waiting for things to get sorted out, and they're still being sorted out.
But
you
snuck off to podcast. That's great.
Oh,
it's all about your allegiances.
Work I am.
That's right. That's right. Shh, don't tell. I too am back. I have not been stranded anywhere. All my flights were just about on time. It was really quite good. But of course, after being gone for so long, the emails and notifications are up to my eyeballs. So I'm just muddling through that. But I do want to talk about a couple of pre-show things. Man, did I read books.
That's good.
I read so many books, I want to talk about them. Not all of them in detail, but I have to give you the update.
Okay.
Number one, I did it, Andy. I finished all of Ian Fleming's Bond books.
And how many was that again?
You would ask that. I think it's like 14. I think it's 14 total. And it's a little bit kludgy because one of the Bond books was Octopussy and the Living Daylights, and it's actually a series of four short books or novellas, including Octopussy and the Living Daylights and a couple of other ones that are all kind of tied into canon. And so that's not an official full-length, novel-length thing that Ian Fleming wrote. And so there are, I think, 13 of them that are part of the extended series and then that short series of shorts. And they were all universally, in my opinion, better than the movies by a wide margin, with the exception of the reboot of Casino Royale, which was really right on target. And the worst of the set, and I say that qualified, the worst of the set was for Spy Who Loved Me, which was atrocious. It was terrible. It was seriously bad and offensive. And, you know, all of these things were reasonably racist, horribly sexist. Like, you go into it knowing that, but the Spy Who Loved Me was over the top and just absolutely dated and offensive. And it's not even really a Bond book. Bond is a character that comes in the last kind of quarter of the book, and so it's not good.
That's the one written from
the perspective of a Bond girl.
Right.
Yeah. So it was a mistake. Fleming actually noted to his publisher that this was a mistake. I should not have written this, but do what you want with it.
Interesting.
And it was terrible. So that was
that's actually one of Roger Moore's better movies.
Yes, absolutely. And which is interesting that they borrowed from the book only the name. Everything else was written sort of whole cloth.
Interesting.
So I did that. Then I read Nothing Lasts Forever by Roderick Thorpe. Now, you know what this is?
Nope.
Die Hard.
Ah, yes. That's right.
Andy, man, I didn't even know it was based on a book, this Die Hard, but I'm telling you, this book is great. Roderick Thorpe, Nothing Lasts Forever. It is a great, great book, and it's exactly what I wanted out of this adaptation. Like, I love both of these properties, the book and the movie. They both are fantastic standalone and are beautifully adapted for one another. The only thing that is substantively different than the movie is they have to change a couple of names, but the main character is actually the father of the woman in the tower, rather than the struggling, soon-to-be ex-husband, right? And so he was a World War II pilot. The book was written in the 70s. He was a World War II pilot. He is an older man, and so to hear all of the great narrative of him running around barefoot, shoot the glass, I mean, the whole thing, all of that is played out with this kind of gray-haired older man, and it makes for a much different, kind of more intense story. The book that was adapted for Die Hard 2 is called 58 Minutes. It was by Walter Wenger, and I haven't read it yet, but it's on deck next. So that's that. The other thing, go ahead.
Is that Walter I think it's Walter Wager, as opposed to Walter Wanger, who I thought you were talking about, because he was the guy who produced some films that we talked about.
You're exactly right. It is Walter Wager.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm glad you said that, because I hear way, and it just ends in jur. I don't know why. The other thing that I read, and this was because of Steve Sarmento, Once and Future King, I had started Ready Player One, Ernest Cline's book, a long, long time ago, and I didn't really connect with the first chapter, so I kind of put it down. But he told me, he said, do it, get it again, Read the book. You're going to like it if you get all the way through it. And he was absolutely right. I really enjoyed it. And I was absolutely connected with all of the pop culture references from my youth. And that was a really fun read in preparation for Steven Spielberg's 2018 film of the same name. And then I followed it up with his newest book, Armada, which just came out, I think last year. And it was not as good, but he sold the rights to Universal for a reported 7 figures, so we should be seeing a film out of that too. And so it was good. It was pretty much, any movie, any story where the main character is a kid who plays video games, and it turns out the video games were training for something else. That's pretty much what this book is. Spoiler. We spoil movies. And then non-book related, Andy, I just have to get this out there. I have now watched BVS Doge, the Ultimate Edition.
Oh, you have?
I have. I've watched it twice, and all the behind the scenes on the that came with it.
Wow,
Andy, I know we'll get letters. I really liked it. And I know I was already the one on the show that liked it more than all of you haters.
Hey, don't call us all haters just because we didn't like it as much as you. I liked it. I enjoyed the movie. I had some issues with it, but I didn't hate it.
Well, you should see the Ultimate Edition because I'm telling you, it is. I feel it's a little trite for me to say this because of the Twitter sort of sub meme that's going on.
I was going to say, were you the Twitter guy?
I was not the Twitter guy who started this, but I feel like I trust Zack Snyder more. Let me say that. It was a dramatically improved experience.
Wow.
Can you think of when was the last movie that you saw where the director's edition or the extended edition dramatically changed the film from, bad to great or, good to great? Do you remember an experience like that?
God, I'd have to go through all the different director's cuts I've seen. I mean, recently, I know we just talked about Terminator 2 and that little bit. It was already great, but I think that the addition of the bit with the chip in the head, it was greatier.
Well, they filled so many. They made these characters. They made every one of these characters real characters, right? There wasn't anything that was just fluffed in there. And I think they really built a story of intrigue and suspense that didn't feel shoehorned in there at all. And I still had 2 pretty significant problems that they didn't resolve, but they made them a little bit softer. As a result. So I really think it's worth seeing. And but I wonder, like, if we had a question, I think it was Stephen Smart asked in our Slack group. He said, I haven't seen the original. Was he the one? Or was this Mike? Anyway, someone in our Slack group said, I haven't seen the BVS Doge. Maybe I should just see the Ultimate Edition? And I don't know how to answer that because I feel like you should just see the good movie, but then what if you don't like it? Maybe you actually need to see the theatrical release in order to appreciate the Ultimate Edition. So there you go.
Yeah, but should you have to see that? See, that's the question.
No, that's what I don't know. I feel like I wouldn't. It was a fine movie. I really enjoyed it, and particularly the behind the scenes stuff was really, really good. I really enjoyed it, and I'm very excited for Wonder Woman. That is a property that has needed to be made for a long, long time, and I think it just the additional stuff they put on this film to introduce the DC universe on film really made me look forward to these characters. I can't wait.
Interesting.
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
Yes, I'm in.
Very exciting.
Let my inner boy out of his closet. Let him out.
Well, I definitely want to see that one. It's on my list of things to see at some point soon, hopefully. So you have a shout out. I do, yes.
I can't believe this is so exciting.
Oh, it was great. While I was on my vacation, I was in a store called PJ's, kind of a grocery store, and the lady checking me out, Jamie, she was looking at my Next Reel shirt, and we started talking about it. She's like, "My husband listens to that show." So small world. So yeah, shout out to Theo in Durango who tunes into the show. So glad you enjoy it, and keep checking in. So this was on your trip to Monument Valley. Yes.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
While I was on vacation, I also we stopped in Monument Valley for a couple days to enjoy the beauty there, and of course also to let's see. I shopped for pony prizes, and including a special pony for the pony prize, which I'm very excited about. And of course, in the spirit of Forrest Gump that we have talked about on the show, I of course did my own little Instagram/Facebook video that is posted for everybody to see out there in the world in tribute to Forrest Gump. And so, yes.
So funny.
the famous road that where he finishes his cross-country run.
That was pretty good.
Good times. Yes, it was,
Yeah.
It was quite fun.
Yeah, that was good. Forrest Gump Point turns out is that's a place a lot of people...
And there's a sign there and everything.
Is it really?
Yeah, it says, this is where Forrest Gump ended his cross-country run in 1980. They do it as if it's a real thing. It's fantastic.
That's so good.
It really is. It is, of course, a beautiful spot. I mean, you're right there just north of Monument Valley. It's just an amazing road. You can see why so many different filmmakers want to go shoot there.
Yeah. Well done there. And let's see. We got some emails that clarified some things for us.
Yes, this is of course what happens when we go on vacation.
This is more follow-up than we've ever had on the show.
Right.
The first one, this comes from Mike Ashford, who is a very kind friend of the show. He says, "Hi guys, a quick email to let you know how much I enjoyed the Great Escape episode. Despite your pronunciation of Richard Attenborough, intentionally incorrect, Attenborough's name, it's pronounced Attenborough. Not since Simon and Garfunkel's Scarborough Fair has the word borough been so mispronounced. Anyway, love the show and can't wait to hear the next episode. You guys are great." Mike Ashford, Shropshire, UK. Now, to which I had to respond, a resident of Shropshire has written us, and we've had trouble with Shire, the word Shire, before. It's not Shropshire, as it turns out. I responded with this question: hey, since you are a native, tell me how to pronounce Shire. And he wrote, thanks. And he says, having spent the best part of a year living in Vallejo, Vallejo in the Bay Area, I'm convinced, as the saying goes, that we are two nations divided by a common language. The word Shire in the U.S. tends to get a bit Lord of the Rings in its pronunciation. Here we say Shropshire as in Shropshire, as in shirt without the T. I hope that helps, as I can still hear the good people in a bar in Petaluma laughing uncontrollably at my attempts at Arkansas. Thank you so much for helping and correcting us, Mike. We sure appreciate you writing in.
As do the hobbits from the Shire. Oh, yeah, there you go.
Stupid Lord of the Rings.
Oh, I love it. And then, of course, Charlie Ullman also wrote in about the Doctor Strangelove episode, saying, great episode. I'm a fairly recent subscriber to your podcast, and he discovered it a few months ago while searching for some stuff on Touch of Evil, and now he's been checking the show out. He says, I'm sure I'm not the first person to mention this to you, but on the off chance you mentioned that you couldn't think of a sexual connotation for the name Mandrake, there most definitely is one. There was some folklore that Mandrake used to grow underneath gallows where men had been hanged. Waiting for Godot, premiered 10 years prior to Strangelove, made specific reference to a curious sexual twist on this. And should we read this? Do you want to play one of the parts?
Which part would you like me to play? Estragon or Vladimir?
Whichever. I'll play Estragon.
Oh, of course. All right. Good. Go ahead.
What about hanging yourselves?
It'd give us an erection.
An erection?
With all that follows. Where it falls, mandrakes grow. That's why they shriek when you pull them up. Did you not know that?
Let's hang ourselves immediately. Oh, so there you go.
Yeah.
See, we bring real culture to this.
We sure do. Oh,
who knew we were going to have some Waiting for Godot on this Andromeda Strain episode.
And then we had something. The Good Ben Lot has written in with a little bit of I don't know. Is this prehistory?
It was a great find, regardless of what it is.
Yeah, it was.
But yeah, he sent us a, in honor of us starting to talk about first shot, last shot of all these different movies, he found a link on oneperfectshotdb.com where it's an article about basically somebody had created this Vimeo link where he compiled a whole bunch of different films, like 5+ minutes worth of films, first shots and last shots, and put them side by side so that you could look at them and really kind of see what the director was saying with that. It was Jacob T. Swinney who put that together a year ago over on Vimeo. Very interesting to look at and see, and I'm glad that we're talking about that now.
Let's tell the people where we're from.
Where are we from?
This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that there is Andy Nelson.
Hello.
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, the second in our 2016 series on disease films with a sweet little ditty from 1971, Robert Wise's The Andromeda Strain. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com. Subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, or join us on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel. And if you've ever found yourself stuck on a flashing red light limbo, then you're just the sort of egghead who's ready for The Next Reel's Instagram hashtag Pony Prize, hashtag Guess the Movie Challenge.
And with that, let's take a trip through the xenon lamp scrub to burn off the outer epithelial layers of our skin, then make our way down to level 4, where Games Master Steven Smart is waiting to tell us who this week's winner is.
Hey guys, and welcome back. While you were away, we had 4 films and 3 winners. First of all, congrats to @Cotton Signs, who got Slapshot from 1977. And then congrats on a double win goes to @Brendo61, who guessed The Carpetbaggers from 1964 and Foreign Correspondent from 1940. And then to finish off, congrats to @Fegfey, who got The Brilliant Out of the Past from 1947. As always, a new challenge starts on Monday. So thanks guys, and see you later.
At long last, we return with The Blot Spot. A friend of the show, Ben Lott, has written in with his feedback on a couple of films that we've missed.
Yeah, first up, it's both of our vacation challenges. Yeah. Dr. Strangelove. He says, Dr. Strangelove is a brilliant film that made me laugh a lot, and yet it had something to say as well. The cast is spectacular, and I love how they play it mostly serious, allowing the script to provide the humor. It was actually my first time watching it, so I'm glad you picked it, Andy, to get it off my list of shame. I can't say it's my favorite movie after the first watch, but it certainly impressed me a lot. Your rank 4, my rank 14. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that is fantastic. I can't wait till he watches it again. I'll bet it climbs. Before that, he'd given us a blot spot on Paranorman. This was my vacation challenge. He says, while I greatly respect the skill and dedication it takes to do stop-motion animation, I don't usually like the look of it. Add in the fact that Paranorman is horror-themed, and I probably should have hated this movie. But the story was so strong, I actually really enjoyed it. I was stunned when they turned the tables, and with only a few frames of the film, I went from looking at the zombies as bad guys to feeling sorry for them. I was also impressed with the message of embracing forgiveness and compassion instead of prejudice and hate, something we really need nowadays. Your rank 18, my rank 39. Not a bad showing for a horror stop-motion film.
Yeah, and I think all in all, I'd say that this vacation challenge has certainly proved a little stronger in Ben's minds than any of our guilty pleasure challenges.
I think so. Well, frankly, and in our minds too. I don't want to speak for you, but
I think that's fair to say.
And finally, we've got one more. This catches us up. I think this catches us up with everything that we missed over vacation, including this one, our poorly calculated show on the Omega Man.
For many reasons.
For so many reasons, because we can't do math.
Oh, well, Ben said, wow, Omega Man was bad. Poorly acted, directed, scored, written, etc. I'm surprised you didn't bring up the biggest plot hole in the whole thing. Light-sensitive creatures who decide to destroy things by burning them? Does fire not create light in this stupid movie? Man, Omega Man was painfully dumb. It's not the worst movie we've covered because it has that quirky, so bad it's good feel to it occasionally, but I'm never going to watch it again. Your rank 244, my rank 234.
I love that Ben thinks there's a biggest plot hole in this whole thing.
Right.
Okay, Andy, it's time. Let's do trailers. First, I feel like this has been one that's been banking up for you.
It has been. Yes, I'll go first. I'm excited to talk about my trailer. It is the third. I don't know if it's the final, but it's the third of the. What are we calling these? The Dan Brown series trilogy.
Yeah, it's no
I'm
Robert
sure
Langdon.
he has something. Yeah, yeah. I'm sure he's got some other fancy name, but yes, it's all these stories about Langdon as he kind of pursues, a crime or a criminal in using a bunch of ancient histories to do so. And this is, of course, Inferno, Tom Hanks's next big thing. If you're not counting Sully, also his next big thing, but this is the Ron Howard next big thing. It is, and it looks pretty interesting. I actually am one of the people who kind of enjoyed Da Vinci Code. Never read any of the books, but I did enjoy the movie. I didn't care so much for Angels and Demons, but this one, it looks really fun, and it's awfully fitting for a disease series that we're talking about right now, because it's essentially this Inferno plague that somebody has created, this virus that they are going to unleash on humanity and destroy a huge chunk of the population, which I think is really funny considering what we're talking about. So it's got all the same stuff going on in this as in the other ones. I've got to get to Florence, and just like the things that it just you never hear a James Bond type actually saying. But I think that's what I kind of like about these Langdon stories is that he's solving these crimes through these ancient texts and ancient paintings and it's this weird level of puzzle play that all these people seem to be doing, which seems kind of absurd, but at the same time, I really do enjoy it. So, and of course, Tom Hanks is in it. And I think, and David Koepp is screenwriter on it. So, I mean, it's got a lot of stuff going for it. I'm looking forward to it. I'm definitely going to check this one out and have some fun with it. What do you think?
Oh, I was thrilled, of course. And I actually liked all of the Robert Langdon stuff. I liked all the books. I liked all I just like it all. I don't care who he's talking about. I'm in. I was very excited to see Felicity Jones in this. I just love what she does. I like Ben Foster so much, and Irfan Khan, who I feel like he's been around for a long time. This Irfan Khan, but he was most recently for me. He was in Jurassic World, the industrialist owner of the park. And he flies a mean helicopter.
Yes, and of course, Life of Pi. I mean, I loved him in Life of Pi too. I mean, he's just one of those guys who
Slumdog and
so many things.
Yeah, so many things. But I just really like that guy, and I'm excited to see him in this one as well. It's a wonderfully international cast, and I think it's going to be great. What can I say?
So, yes. Absolutely. And Omar Sy is in it. He was. I think just recently in Intouchables, that French film that got so much praise.
That's right, and ironically, he was also in Jurassic World. He was one of the co-trainers of the Velociraptors.
Yeah.
So yes, no, it's great, and so I think it's going to be a lot of fun, a great popcorn movie. When does it hit?
This one's coming out in October. It's going to be a big kind of explosion in October that's going to kind of hit everywhere, starting at the end, October 28th. Actually, no, it starts mid-October in Belgium, Argentina, Australia, and then it just kind of goes through the whole month. Actually, oddly enough, U.S. is the kind of one of the last stopping points. Canada, Japan, U.S. on the 28th, and then France the November 9th, and that's kind of the end of it. But yeah, it starts big over everywhere else in the world.
Well, I can't wait. My trailer actually comes out first. I'm talking about Edge of Winter. Director Rob Connolly, co-written by Connolly and Kyle Mann, the story of two brothers stranded by a brutal storm with an unpredictable father they barely know. The boys begin to suspect their supposed protector may be their biggest threat. The film stars Tom Holland, Joel Kinnaman, Rachel Lefebvre, Shiloh Fernandez, Rossif Sutherland, Patrick Garrow, lots of people. But the thing, the one I was most interested in, well, the two I should say, Joel Kinnaman and Tom Holland. I'm pretty excited about this film. It looks gritty. It looks, anytime you put two kids with an unsuspecting sort of murderer father character, I'm fascinated. What was the one that hit that we liked so much? probably 2 years ago. We didn't talk about it on the show, but I know we picked it as a trailer. It was the kids, and they found the guy living in the woods.
Mud. Oh, with Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, with Matthew McConaughey. It kind of has that sort of vibe to it, this trailer. I mean, except for it's in winter. And it just looks really, really gritty. Rob Connolly was first and foremost a cinematographer, has far more camera credits to his name than he does films, but this still looks like his first big feature. And he hasn't even helmed the camera for any big features, and nor has he directed any large feature. Kyle Mann has worked as a producer, and this is his first penned film, but he's been a producer on a number of films that we would know, Capote and Push and Devil's Rejects, and so he's been around working on things for a while. Did it appeal to you from this group of feature firsts?
It did. I mean, it looks like one of these creepy stories. I don't know. I do get troubled with kids who kind of feel like obligated to go do something with an adult who tells them so just because the adult's an authority figure, like a parent or something, and you just know it's going to end badly.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know if I want to watch this one. It looks like it could be pretty rough, but it does look pretty interesting. It definitely looks thrilling. There are elements to it that I think stand as strong and creepy elements. And I'm curious. I'm really curious about this one to kind of get a sense of the direction that it really ends up going. Is this dad somebody who can be counted on, or does he end up being unreliable and these kids have to fend for themselves? So I'm very curious about it, and I look forward to seeing it.
August 12th, 2016, and that is the only release date that we've got. So it looks like it's going to be either a small or at least currently weirdly unannounced list of cities this close to its release. But I'm excited about it. I'm excited about it mostly because of that Tom Holland. He's going to be Spider-Man, and that's worth noting.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to seeing him in something other than Spider-Man to really get a sense, because I don't think I saw him in anything before.
Did you see
Captain America?
Wasn't he in? He was in Locke. He was in Heart of the Sea.
Well, he was in Locke, but he was a voice on the phone, right?
Yep.
So I heard him, I guess.
You heard him, yeah.
Didn't go, wow, he's great.
Yeah.
And what else did you say?
In the Heart of the Sea.
Didn't see that. That was
that would explain
movie.
it. That was the whale, yeah.
I need to watch that.
Otherwise, Andy, establishment gonna fall down, go boom.
Now, don't be scared. I'm a doctor.
Where am I?
A special laboratory in Nevada. We brought you here. You're sick.
In a true biological crisis, which our exploration of space could bring about, the present lunar receiving laboratory might prove inadequate. I therefore urge the establishment of a facility to deal specifically with an extraterrestrial form of life.
Seems to me, General, Dr. Stone put one over on you. In fact, he made us all think his wildfire lab could handle any contamination from outer space.
Isolate and identify.
Good God.
It's no accident. I suspect they were looking for the ultimate biological weapon.
You could change everything.
This is, of course, Sandy, the Andromeda Strain. The Andromeda Strain, based on the book by the late Michael Crichton. This was directed by Robert Wise, screenplay by Nelson Gidding, and stars Arthur Hill, David Wayne, James Olsen, Kate Reed, Paula Kelly, George Mitchell, Raymond Bierry, Kermit Murdoch, you go Kermit, Richard O'Brien, Peter Hobbs, Eric Christmas, and a few others. This was a story of a rock from space that happens to have a little green silicon alien on it, and it kills a town, and that's why we're talking about it. How'd it hit you, Andy?
I saw this for the first time sometime in the last 10 years or so. I rented it because it was one that I don't know if it's in a Crichton kick. I can't remember exactly what it was that I was doing. But I enjoyed it. I mean, I do enjoy the story. I think it's really interesting. It's not the most gripping film. I definitely feel that Robert Wise would go through these periods where he really focused on the process of things. And I definitely appreciated that in this film, yet it didn't make it a film that I ended up loving. I found it interesting. I enjoyed it. I think it works. But yeah, it never fully got me captivated.
I think that's the problem of it, because it sets up a really strong premise. I love the discovery of the town. I think that's a really kind of intense sequence, and the buzzards, and that all really works for me. It's once they get into the lab, the interminable processing of body and cleaning and all the levels. It should have been great, but I was so bored through much of that, and that is, I think, a sign of a poor adaptation, because this is Michael Crichton's stock in trade. I mean, this is what he does, is write these sort of procedurals, and he does it really, really well. And I think that, I even liked Sphere. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of where we are. I think that this is his domain, and I think the adaptation just did not do justice to the source material, which I think as a novel really holds up even to this day. And so that was a challenge I had, particularly because I liked so much about the end. I think the end, the intensity of the end, which really allows us to capture the kind of, I think, the heart of the material, which is, the technology has run amok, we fear strangers, and that we have to somehow overcome our own sort of man-made devices and stop the bomb from going off. The ticking clock element here, I think, is really intense, and I like that element a lot. And I wish there had been more of that in the hour and 40 minutes in between the beginning and that point at the end.
Well, it's funny. So you've read the book, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So I've never read...
It's been a long time, I should say.
I haven't read a single Crichton book. I've never read anything of his.
Oh.
Yeah, somehow I've managed to skip them all. I don't know exactly how I did that, but yeah, I never got on any of the bandwagons when they kept coming every time a new movie would come out. He talked about the way that he wrote this book as if this whole thing was real. He wrote it as if it was almost kind of a science textbook sort of thing, where it was just kind of explaining a situation. He wrote it very kind of withdrawn from the characters, just very, very focused on facts. And he even went so far as to create a completely fictional bibliography in the back of his book. He put imagery in there and kind of computer printouts in there to make it feel like this was just a real thing, and he was basically just an author documenting exactly what it was that had happened, which I thought was really interesting. And I actually, without having read the book, I actually felt like the film and the script basically did exactly what Crichton was doing with the book when he wrote it. This is some filmmakers who took the work and said, okay, this is how he wrote it. Now we are going to write it as if it's a documentary, and we're going to basically kind of document this process of what happened over these 4 days and everything that these people had to go through in order to basically save humanity. And I thought that it was a very interesting process and a very interesting way that they went about it in doing so. Still, I don't think it completely worked. But I from the perspective of not having read Crichton, I certainly can appreciate that Robert Wise and Nelson Gidding chose that direction to adapt this book.
Yeah, I do too. For me, I don't know. I can see why they chose to adapt it. I just feel like they didn't capture what the source material really wanted to tell us. And this is the connection to Westworld. He wrote and directed Westworld in 1973, and that film reads very much to me like an apology to this. That's the message, the underlying message around technology and fear is all about Westworld, and it is everything in Westworld that comes from that is what is missing in the Andromeda Strain in terms of just the heart and soul of the film.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, I have plenty of problems with Westworld, and I'm really glad that they're readapting it, because the movie is full of issues. I have problems galore with it. As fun as it is, I'm really excited to see what this recent remake is going to be like for TV. But yeah, I think you're right. And going back to Robert Wise again, and I mean, just when I watched this again this time, I'm like, this is exactly what he did in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. He spends so much time focusing on all these details and elements and things that make up the process of people doing these things, that it just makes it interminable. And you're right. I mean, the whole middle where you're watching them go through the process, they say it's going to be, I can't remember, 6 hours that they have to go through these processes in order just to get down from one level to the next level.
But God, why did they show us all 6 hours?
Exactly. That's what it feels like. Oh, it's just, I mean, there could have been another way. There is another way that it could have been done. And he just chose to do it this way because he, seems obsessed with it.
Well, and, obsessed with it. Yeah. Also, they put an awful lot of work into that set and into and it felt really like a Kill Your Darlings moment. Like they just fell in such love with so many elements of the production that they forgot to cut for sake of story. That's what it really reads to me. Like they just wanted to show us every button push, every click, every one of those fantastic computer, early computer animations that they were building. They needed to show us all the stuff they built, and that ended up really doing a disservice to the final film for me.
I think a certain element of it, Nelson Gidding was talking about how when he wrote the script, he wrote it as a cinescript by Nelson Gidding, not just script or screenplay by Nelson Gidding. And looking at pages of his script, it actually has some of the details from, I don't know if it's just from the book or from the book as well as the film, but certainly elements that you see in the film, like when the computer does the printout scan of one of the doctor's feet as it kind of examines it for germs and stuff, and you see the little foot image come up on the screen made out of text, different letters,
like zeros, ones, twos,
right? Exactly. That is a page in his cinescript. So it's interesting. It's like they took to all of that detail so much so that they actually wrote it into the script so that they could write it into the film. And yes, it bogs things down quite a bit.
So they made a few changes in terms of just the structure of the book to movie and doing the adaptation. One of them, of course, was changing a central character from man to a woman.
Yes, they did. Yeah, they. I guess they decided. I think Nelson Gidding. I hate to say he was ahead of his time, but yeah, he rightfully decided. He decided that Dr. Peter Levitt from the book. We had all these male doctors. Why not make somebody a female? And so he rightly switched Peter Levitt to Ruth Levitt, and convinced. I think a little. I don't want to say begrudgingly, but I think it took a little convincing for Robert Wise to make that switch. And it's funny because reading the stories about that, it actually sounded like Robert was really unsure of this decision when they went into it, and actually had to consult some scientists to see if it was okay to have a woman scientist come in and do this. And they're like, "Oh yeah, of course, we've got all sorts of women scientists." But just, right. I think it speaks highly. You just see
those conversations. Wait, okay, seriously, girls do science? Stupid.
Well, that brings us all the way back to what was it, Thor with science,
right?
The little science video. So there you go.
So there were a couple of other little changes, but overall, I think what is mostly missing, as we've already talked about, is the heart. I do want to bring up the opening. There are two things going on in the very open. There's the opening title card, right?
Right.
Before the opening titles.
It's like I think that they added it there to further enhance this documentary style, making it feel very much like this is a story that is being put forth as if they are just kind of presenting some actual documented information for us.
We want to do a found footage film, but we don't know what that is yet.
That's right. Cannibal Holocaust hasn't played.
Right,
yet.
It hasn't played for me yet. I have no inspiration. After the opening title card, it talks about how it talks about how this thing happened and that it was. Yeah, I think it says something about how the papers are going. Nothing in here should violate national security.
Yeah.
There's something about national security. Then he goes into the opening titles. Lola Landikich is over at Art of the Title and has done some fantastic write-ups over there. And she says, along with the sonic language of devices, an onslaught of information is presented, superimposed and mutated. The hums and beeps, syncopated and layered, abstract themselves into an ominous mechanical thrum, a soundtrack for graphic annihilation as the truth dangles just beyond our reach. Which is a really beautiful way to describe something that I hated so much. Attila Delando's titles were exactly that. It's like if you take that beautiful language from Lola and you say it with a really mean voice. That's how I felt. It was an onslaught, and it was mutated, and it hurt my face and my head.
Wow.
I think it's mostly the sound, I would say not music, but the sound, and we can talk a little bit about that about Gil Mellé, who did I'll graciously call it a score. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I had a really hard time with it, and I think it starts out right at the beginning, hurting my head. There you go. That's how I started the film, feeling bad.
That is funny.
I don't know if it's funny.
I liked it. I thought all that was great.
I could have predicted that.
I thought it set me up very well for a film that I was expecting more from.
I think it's one of those things. You know how like some people can't taste certain things. For some people, they eat popcorn and only taste copper.
That's right.
Yeah, well, I may be making that up, so don't agree too quickly. But it's similar to that. The sound was so grating to me, I felt like I had to squint through it. I did it for you.
You need one of those. You're one of those people who watches those videos just to hear the sounds of people like running their fingers through somebody's hair or things like that.
I think you've just described something I don't do ever. What are you talking about?
Those videos where it's just like a weird sound and people like listen to it for hours.
Yeah, no, I know. I don't associate with those videos or people who listen to them.
Well, all I'm saying is that for some people, this Gil Mellé Open is exactly what they want to be listening to.
That is fair. I'll give you that. There are those people. The film plays with time.
A little bit, yeah. I thought it was interesting chronologically essentially the story is taking place in February 1971. And that's kind of the 4 days. We have these 4 key days of this story as these 4 scientists try to stop the Andromeda Strain from growing and basically destroying humanity. But then we also do get some jumps forward to April 1971, where we kind of see some Senate hearings after the fact, and then we jump backward to March 1969. As I think one of our key scientists kind of starts setting up his group and kind of creating some of the rules. I thought that was an interesting little way to do that. I just wish that it did it a little more. It really only happens. We do get some of the jumps to the Senate hearing midway through and then at the end, but that's pretty much it. And then I think just the once to the beginning. And I don't know. I really liked that element. I felt it was something they could have done a little more with.
In how they teased through it by only doing just a little bit of it, it made it a little bit hard to follow. What are we talking about now? Right, we're in the Senate hearing room now. I get it.
No, and that's absolutely true. I actually had to rewind it to look at the date stamps and go, oh, okay, this is after the fact. Oh, this was before. Like I actually did have to.
Well, and let's go back to my hate of the opening titles. I think the opening titles set us up to disregard the date stamps because there's so much text in the opening titles that we try to read but don't, and it comes by so fast that we're left to, I think, as a viewer, we're left to say, it's communicating, hey, there's a lot of data that we're talking about. This is a science-y thing. There's going to be science happening in front of your face. You don't necessarily need to pay attention to all of this. And because of that conditioning, those date stamps go by a little too quickly.
That's very fair, and I think it's a logical thing to say.
All right, first shot, last shot then. Show off.
Yeah, the first shot was... I think what it's doing is really just setting up a kind of mystery and an air of suspense. We don't know what's going on. It's so stinking dark. Really hard to tell what's going on. But we do see the back of somebody's head. In the far, far distance, we see a town. And we can't tell if this person's a sniper or who they are. We don't really have a clear sense as to what this person is doing here. So it's really just kind of setting up a sense of mystery. And we have already had kind of the opening text, so to a certain extent, you'd kind of understand the nature of this type of story. But still, it's an interesting way to set it up.
I was actually interested to see what you would consider as the first shot.
Yeah, it's hard to say because of all the credits, but I figured as soon as the credits ended for me, because everything else was coming during the credits, I figured that it all kind of built into just the title sequence and that this was really the first shot. Okay,
and that pairs with the final shot, which I guess we have two choices here too. We have the final shot of they're back in the Senate room. I think that's the final human shot. And we hear this, the last line is, exactly, Senator, what are we going to do if this were to happen again? And then it goes to the close-up of the crystalline structure of the sort of silicate that we were introduced to earlier in the film, mutating and growing. And on screen we see, 310,000 times magnification, then 998,000 times magnification, then 601 appears on screen. 601 represents when the computer has hit an overload because it's getting too much data from what it is measuring. And finally, end of program, disengage. Demonstrating again that overrun. The computer has failed and the movie is over.
Which to me kind of had a little hint of, this is the sort of thing that maybe we need to be a little more prepared for. We're not, our systems that we currently have aren't expansive enough to really handle it. We need to be watchful. That was kind of the sense I had.
Yeah, for me, and I don't think, this doesn't seem like a pairing that, Wise probably thought too much about, right? First shot, last shot. When we look at some of those fantastic first shot, last shots in the video that, that Ben shared with us, Swinner stuff, you can see there's some real intention around it. I don't see a whole lot of intention. What I find interesting about it is the first shot opens on what we eventually learn is a military attempt at containing whatever is going on, evaluating the situation, and that is very much a human construct. And then the end is the computer that can't handle what is going on, right? So nothing that we have created, no system that we have created, no human solution, no technical solution is able to handle what is to come. And so it is the Kobayashi Maru, it's the no-win scenario, and that's for me very much what this film is about.
That makes sense.
Let's talk about the cast a little bit.
Yeah, it was interesting. Robert Wise, in order to really stick with that documentary feel, he opted to kind of cast unknowns, or at least people who weren't big stars, like Gregory Peck, things like that. He opted to really kind of go for faces of people from theater or who had been bit players, things like that. And I thought it was an interesting choice, and I think it works because it does kind of keep you a little separated from the actors because you don't know who they are. You're really just trying to kind of absorb them from afar without having any experience with them beforehand.
Yeah. So who sticks out for you? We start with Arthur Hill.
Arthur Hill, I think if anyone sticks out to me, really, it's Kate Reid. But I did enjoy Arthur Hill. He seemed kind of like the leader of the group. He had a sense of things. I don't know. I guess talking about the heart that the story was missing. Again, I really felt like I could have used a little bit more to help me connect to all of these characters. I just never really kind of got into any of them exactly. But I did enjoy him, and he had been in a number of things. But yeah, this definitely, including actually Michael Crichton's Future World in 76. Right. And he was actually the narrator of Something Wicked This Way Comes, which I didn't realize.
Which was fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't know. I say that, but then I think about it and I'm like, well, it was fantastic when I was
exactly. I was just going to say that. I may be speaking way out of turn. I haven't seen it since I was 10, so whatever.
Yeah.
He was in the adaptation of Rabbit Run. Which was great. And There are some. He's one of those characters that I feel like he sticks out to me as kind of he's the doctor, the agent, the officer, like the kind of weird, mysterious man in power or control kind of character, and in this case he is too. He's also extremely sterile in this film. I mean, his portrayal of Dr. Stone, he very much abides by the process and the rules, and his ultimate faith, his ultimate allegiance is in the thing that he has created to protect the planet, even when everyone else thinks it's ridiculous.
Yeah, he's the one that we flash back to into 69
yeah.
and see him kind of setting a lot of this stuff up.
Right. And so he's ultimately the one who loses the most when the technology fails and the thing tries to blow them up, and in spite of what they now know to be the wrong choice. So I think he's an interesting character. I think it was an interesting portrayal as kind of the leader of the pack, the guy who brought everyone together. And this is also a familiar trope in Crichton's work, right? Is that there's the guy who wrote the report who then gathers all of the experts from crazy different fields, right? The exact same playbook he used multiple times. I'm thinking specifically of Sphere in this case, where he wrote the playbook for what happens if an alien spaceship comes around, and all of these people didn't even know that they were in the list until an alien thing came around, and they were all called into duty to do something that they didn't even know they had to do. And so it was interesting. This really felt like a throwback to something that Crichton has done before, and Jeremy Stones plays the guy who calls the team together. So,
yeah.
Charles Dutton is played by David Wayne. What do we know of David Wayne? Do you like David Wayne?
I like him quite a bit. I mean, his I don't know. I think that his face is a face that you just find comforting. He seems like one of those guys that you'd want to be your doctor because you'd feel safe with him, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy his bit. The woman who plays his wife is actually was the wife in Seconds before he goes and has his big surgery.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting, an interesting note in his career is that he actually played the Peter Lorre role in the remake of M in 1951, where it was all set in L.A.
Oh, fascinating.
So, yeah, that's kind of an interesting little tidbit in his career. But, I mean, I like him. I mean, he's not, I don't know, again, not one of my favorite characters in the film, but I do enjoy him. I think that he's interesting enough. He had been in some interesting films like Adam's Rib and Stella and I don't know, Front Page. I mean, his career's kind of up and down. It's definitely a lot of bit parts through his career, but he's somebody that I do enjoy seeing on the screen.
Well, a long career, 40s to late 80s.
Yeah.
Before he passed away in 95. James Olsen plays Mark Hall.
Little Jimmy Olsen.
I guess they called him that.
He's one of those guys who, looking through his credits, I'm like, well, I guess I saw him. I think Amityville 2 is probably where I saw him before, but I think that's it. I mean, I think his part was an interesting one because he ends up being the one who is kind of the forced savior, because without knowing it, he's the one who they kind of are relying on. He's the I can't remember what they called him, but like
he's the odd man out.
He's the odd man out, right? Yeah. Because he's not married to anybody. He doesn't have any attachments. So he's the one that they can bequeath this key to shut off the nuclear device, because he's the only one who's not attached.
Don't you have to die to be bequeathed?
I don't know. Do you? Then I guess
you bequeath. Yeah, I think bequeath is kind of dark.
Well, he's given, but yes, you're right.
Here's a funny thing. You want to hear a funny thing?
Bequeath, pass something on or leave something to someone else.
Oh.
So technically...
Well, there's subtext. There's no subtext in a dictionary, Andy.
Right, fine.
I actually really like James Olsen. He was the medical doctor, and I think if anything, if there is heart to be found in the sterility of the rest of the lab, it's going to be in the office, in the doctor's theater. right? This is where we have our nurse, Paula Kelly, and James Olsen working together to figure out what is in common with an old man who drinks Sterno and a little baby who is found crying, the only survivors from this town where everybody else turned to dust.
Right. No,
and
it's interesting.
It is interesting. I think that is actually one of the more interesting, storylines in the film, and I enjoyed following it. And I enjoyed the way he portrays the sort of passion of his work. Let me just get back into the lab. Let me get back to my patients. And while everyone else was just focused on the rock,
but without knowing it.
Yeah.
Luckily, he didn't, because if he had been in there more often and taken care of the baby better, the baby would have stopped crying and would have died.
That's right. Kate Reid, you want to talk about Kate Reid from the beginning.
I really enjoy her. I think that it was smart to switch a role to a female, and I think that she ended up being the one who's the most interesting. I think she's given a lot of fun lines, a lot of personality and zip, and just that sarcasm. She comes across as somebody who, I don't know, I think she just works really well as this character in the film. We talked about her in Atlantic City. She was in that. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I think that she's just one of those actresses that does kind of have a way of standing out. And I think there's something about her look here, the way they really dress her down with her science outfit, to just kind of make her be this, and just this person who is just there to get her work done and, complain about it as needed.
Yeah. Oh, she was grisly. I think, it's a little bit unfortunate because that middle sequence takes so long. I feel like some of the complexity of her character is a little bit lost. I love that she's epileptic. I love that part of her character. I think that's really interesting, and I think they play it so soft, like her and her red light, like discovering the red light and missing the red light on the red flashing signal on the computer screen. If you're not really paying attention, it could pass by, and you're not quite sure how they figure stuff out without the clue to uncovering that she's epileptic.
Yeah, that's a very critical part of the story, and I think it's really interesting. And it is one of those ones where it's like they could have spent a little more time focusing on that. I guess I didn't have that much problem with the focus on it. It just might have been one of those things, though, that could have just been built up a little bit. Because by the time Dr. Hall kind of figures out the thing, it doesn't, I don't know, the way that he figures it out and sorts out the plan, it seems to kind of deflate some of the crisis caused by it.
Yeah, that's true. Which again, it sort of underplays her, the complexity of her character.
No, you're right.
I would say, if you have you seen Death of a Salesman, the Dustin Hoffman TV movie of it with Malkovich? She plays Linda Lohman, and it is absolutely riveting portrayal of that character from 1985. It's one that we look at in the class that I teach. That it's just great. If you haven't seen it, it's worth checking out.
I need to check that one out.
I already mentioned Paula Kelly plays Karen Anson, the nurse.
I don't know. I guess it's just one of those roles where it's like she's a woman nurse, and she's the one who it seems to have the maternal instincts and care about the baby.
Yeah.
And it just felt a little kind of 60s, 70s male, and it's like, of course she's going to be the one who's got the maternal instincts and wants to save the baby and feed the baby and all that.
Right.
It just, she's not as cold and clinical because has that maternal instinct and cares. And, I don't know. I guess I enjoyed her enough in the film. It's just the part for me, I don't know. It bothered me in that aspect.
You're a hard man, Andy Nelson.
I am.
She's been in a bunch of stuff, but she is, I think, more known for her role in Soylent Green, which, if you haven't heard, is People.
Spoiler. Jeez.
I'm not sure you've heard we spoil movies around here. I thought she was great, and I think her character actually serves more of a role than the maternal instinct. She's she's sort of the interface to the lab, and I kind of like her introducing James Olsen to the lab that he's going to work in. I like the little tour. I like the way she talks about the computer. I like the way she kind of welcomes us to the laboratory. She's the thing that gives the production design a voice. In many respects, and so I liked that part.
No, and I agree with that. I definitely feel that. It was that other issue that bothered me. But you're right. She's fine.
I don't have to be right. I am in this case, but I don't have to be. She was in Night Court.
Oh,
yeah. I mean, she was
in Night Court.
She was public defender Liz Williams. She was a recurring character.
Huh.
How anybody else on in cast that you particularly want to talk about, that you have something to say?
I don't think so. I think the rest of the cast, they did their part. But again, the whole idea of this film is to have this documentary. It's almost a very clinical, sterile documentary approach. So you don't get really attached to people. They're there fulfilling their roles. And so that's kind of, that's where I stand with it. None of them really wowed me because of that.
All of these characters, I mean, it's tough to find one that has fewer than 100 credits. Many of the credits after these films in the 70s were, TV. With the exception of Kermit Murdoch, who ended up with just a few credits until the late 70s when he passed away. Interesting. But you'd see them through the 80s TV, through ER, through St. Elsewhere, through through the 80s and 90s TV. They're kind of staple faces that look familiar, but no breakout stars.
Right.
I would say. All right.
Interesting how this and Omega Man both kind of feel that way as far as the actors that they had in them.
Yeah. This was a film that stifled careers. The film rights of this thing, this was, I guess, one of the early big breaks for Crichton as a screenwriter. He sold the rights for $250,000.
Well, and this
1970s?
And this was early in his career. I mean, this was the first book that he wrote under his own name. Everything else, because he was in med school.
Yeah, and
he didn't want all the people to know that he was an author because they would think less of him. So he just, which I think is really funny. But everything else that he'd written prior had all been under pseudonyms. And this was the first time that he actually wrote something under his own name. And I think it caught on and people were interested by it. And I mean, I think it's great that he was able to kind of get a nice little chunk like that for selling his novel for an adaptation.
And it was a fun book. It was a much more fun book than the film ended up being. Cinematography, man, this was like a demo reel for the split diopter.
Yes,
right?
Yes, it was. There was a lot of it in there, and that was I don't know. I don't know if it was Richard Klein who was the DP or if it was Robert Wise. I know Robert Wise had a lot of say in doing that because he really wanted to make everything kind of visible. Again, kind of that documentary approach. He didn't want it to necessarily feel like he was picking and choosing. So yeah, you really have split diopter all over the place and split screen. I mean, it's interesting split screen too. It's not just straight up, two halves of a screen. There would be like little floating boxes and other boxes that would kind of join them or float around them and everything. It's pretty interesting. I enjoyed seeing what he did with it.
I really did too. I think that there's a really interesting segment as the team is searching the town in which they use split screen to show what the team members are looking at as they're looking at it without taking the camera off the team member. So you'll see a floating box of a hazmat suited team member peering through a window, and then what is in that window shows up in a separate box next to them so you can see what they're looking at, and then it'll disappear as the team member looks in another direction or opens a door. You'll see what they see in there, and I thought it was a really interesting way to unravel the town for us, and it's something that I don't remember ever seeing used in that way before. I thought that was really clever.
I agree. It was really unique to kind of see it done that way. And I just loved the way that all the little boxes were moving around. And to a certain extent, it reminded me of the Thomas Crown Affair, and like the way that they used split screen in that film, which I think to a certain extent was I don't know if it was new and unique, but I did like how they did it, particularly in the opening of that film.
Production design, Boris Levin.
What I found interesting was that he actually worked with Gidding as Gidding was kind of working on the script to kind of co-develop some of the story elements in the that were both in the script and then eventually in the set. I thought that was an interesting way to work, that you'd actually kind of bring the production designer in to kind of figure out, okay, so how would we do this? And then work to kind of piece the world together. It's not something you hear very often. So I thought that was fascinating.
I don't want to spoil the numbers, but did you get a sense of what I had read is that the lion's share of the budget of this film actually went to the lab, that it was an over large for what they actually needed, but that he wanted to, that Wise really wanted to make this feel like a complete universe. And so they spent a lot of money on this on this set.
Which is funny because you've got the core tunnel, which you see, it's the curved tunnel that goes kind of around the central core. And you see it, and I mean, they just repainted it every time you were on a different level. So it always felt like a different level. But it's interesting because you never see much of it other than a small stretch of it at a time. So it doesn't feel like it's that huge of a set. So
right.
It's kind of interesting. It's not like you watch them as they run around, a 360 loop around this thing or anything.
Right.
And then there's the central core, which, I mean, they did actually have to break the stage floor to build down and then make it tall enough so these guys could be climbing the ladder and everything. But even then, they brought in Al Whitlock, who's an amazing matte painter from the era, to kind of finish, and he did the whole top level of that, and it was pretty interesting. I mean, I really liked this world. I thought they did a great job of putting it together.
Yeah, I did too. I thought it was beautiful. It just felt like maybe they just went a little overboard in some places where they didn't need to. I'm just saying. In particular, the security system that protects the core was terrible.
Yeah, these lasers that they have for what was it, for small mammals that it detected in there to take them out so they didn't destroy anything. They are the slowest lasers in the world. If a small mammal gets in there, they would never hit something.
They would never hit anything because they're slow, and they don't aim very well.
No,
even when they have time, they don't. There's no aim. Though I have to say, the shot to the face, he takes a shot to the face, James Olsen does, and it burns a hole in his cheek, and then another in his hand, and both of those looked very painful.
Yeah, they looked rather disgusting. It's like all of his skin blackened, and it just looked kind of dead.
Charred.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously it hit him pretty hard because he could barely make his way out. It was those were some serious laser shots. Very serious, those that did accidentally, luckily, hit him. Douglas Trumbull is back on effects with James Short and Albert Whitlock. He brought a lot to the table here, and he said he actually almost went bankrupt doing the effects for this film because he actually underbid the job, thinking it wouldn't take quite as much. But I mean, everything that he supplied here was so cutting edge at the time. And I think it is important to note, looking back on a film like this, that the effects that we're seeing, the microphotography with the motion control, the high-res video imagery that they have, all the different optical photographic visual effects, and the 3D rendering of the lab when you see it kind of spinning up there. All that stuff was new at the time. And so it really kind of set a bar for effects. And Douglas Trumbull, I mean, he's a guy who had been doing this since he started with some of these films, like 2001. It's just amazing. And the stuff that he would do, like in Close Encounters, I mean, he did some just really fantastic work. And the stuff he does here is also solid. I think the issue is, again, Robert Wise spends so much time focusing on it that it kind of pulls us out of the story. Yeah, I totally agree. Although one of the highlights that is just so troubling in this film is how they handle lab animals. Ugh. It's really hard to watch. And I had to question,
given the era, whether they were just killing animals for the film. It was unnerving.
I absolutely thought so too, and it does say right at the beginning, all the treatment of the animals was under the watch of whoever it was, ASPCA.
But nothing else in the beginning was true. How are we supposed to believe that?
Well, what's funny about it, I think, is looking at what they're doing in 1971 and thinking about what they would do in a film today. Would even the animal rights group have let them do what they did? Because essentially they practically killed these animals. They sucked out all the oxygen and pumped in CO, and in the process of that, these animals had nothing to breathe, and they were basically going into asphyxiation and suffocating to death. And we're watching these animals actually die, look like they die, and then as soon as the edit cuts, we're not seeing them flashing them with oxygen blasts that they would use to kind of revive them. And Robert Wise says, "Oh, and then the animals got up and it was like nothing ever happened." Like, I'm sure that's how it seemed, Robert. But
yeah,
at the same
Robert,
time,
let's go. I've got a '68 Chevelle parked in the lot, and it's got a vacuum hose to the exhaust. Let's go ahead and try that with you. See how it feels.
Right, exactly. I have a feeling there's a little more to it than, they just popped right back up. It's like nothing ever happened.
Really unnerving.
That's because they can't tell you how awful it was.
Yeah, it's a monkey. It's a rat, you dummy.
Oh, it is horribly troubling to watch.
Yeah, it was really, it was very troubling. But also really added to the overall fabric of the film. And it was, when that happened, it sort of wakes you up.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, to that end, it serves its purpose in the film, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
that's what it was supposed to do.
Yeah.
Shall we talk more about the music that I hated?
I guess we don't have to say a whole lot other than, I think Gil Mellé obviously did exactly what Robert Wise was looking for, which is creating a score that was not a musical score. It was just sounds and soundscapes and just interesting vibes that kind of came through to kind of set us off a little bit. It was very uncomfortable to listen to the stuff that he put forth. For me, in the context of the film, that meant that it worked. But I can totally appreciate the way that it is making you feel. It's not something I would ever listen to on its own.
I was going to say, how does that fit in your soundtrack rotation? I can't imagine that Robert Wise would hear my frustrations with it and call that anything less than a win, given the film. It is really unnerving soundscape. The argument can be well made that it served its purpose by setting me off in such a uncomfortable space.
What's interesting is that he's listed with credits spanning over 100 films and television works, and in the list of stuff that he's done, this is listed as the first, which makes me think it might be the most popular film, maybe not the most popular score, but it does make me wonder, like, what the rest of his scores are like for those other nearly, over 100 projects. Because I don't know how much I'd want to jump in and tune into them.
How'd this do at award season?
Well, it did get nominated for a couple things, and I think that's kind of what happens with this sort of film. It did get nominated for Best Art Direction, again by Boris Levin, along with William H. Tuntke and Ruby R. Levitt. It did lose to Nicholas and Alexandra, and it was also nominated for Best Film Editing by Stuart Gilmore and John W. Holmes, and it did lose to The French Connection, which I think is fair to say for that one. I guess it's worth pointing out, as a former editor himself, Robert Wise, I guess it speaks to his direction that he ended up directing a film that brought its editors to an Oscar nomination because, he knew how to tell the story tautly, and these guys did a great job for him.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing was remade in 2008. Have you seen it?
No, we did mention that briefly last week, and I haven't seen it. I didn't from then to now. I didn't seek it out. I just didn't hear much great about it, so I kind of left that one alone. But I don't know. It's one of those things. I don't think a remake was a bad idea, but it didn't sound like that was the one to do it right.
Yeah, it's a little bit jarring. I've only seen the first hour and a half because that's the only part that's been bootlegged. It's tough to find. Like, you can't just buy it. It's not an iTunes thing. It's not on Netflix. It's, which maybe is telling. But it does star some interesting people of television lore. Benjamin Bratt is in it. Krista Miller, Luis Ferreira, who is, obviously in our favorite Dawn of the Dead remake. Young Rick Schroeder plays Major Bill Keane. Eric McCormack from Will and Grace fame. Daniel Day Kim from Lost fame. So it's full of these people. Oh, Andre Braugher is in it. Andre Braugher actually plays General Manchek. So it is interesting, but it just doesn't. I'll tell you what it does do. This was my first, the first thing I noted. Man, do they move through those 5 levels.
Oh, nice.
Oh, it's so fast. They show him scrubbed. They show him on the xenon light. They show him covered in soap. It's like a car wash. It is. They just stand on this thing, and it's like the opening to the Jetsons. It's really funny, and so they just get right into the story. Viola Davis is in it too, of all people.
Oh, wow.
She's actually, so it's full of some people that I really like. It just it ended up being kind of a half a story. I really would like to see this thing done well. I think it's a pretty good story, and this wasn't a terrible movie. It certainly was no Omega Man.
Yeah, right. Absolutely not.
What do you think? You want to do the numbers?
Yeah, let's do it. This film, it did okay for itself. It was released March 12th, 1971, made for about $6.5 million, which in today's dollars is about $37.5 million. And then it ended up grossing at the domestic box office about just under 12.5, which is just over 71 million. So all told, the film ended up making an adjusted profit per finished minute of about 260,000.
Oh, that's all right.
Not too bad. It puts it at 130 on our list.
Yeah. Well, I think with that, we should probably rank it.
Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel. You'll find our list. You sign in. You search for the Andromeda Strain 1971 version, and that'll give you the film that we're ranking tonight. Andromeda Strain versus...
Well, first up, we have Andromeda Strain versus Hot Fuzz. I'm wondering if that is going to kind of become a new Oh Brother block.
Oh, well, it's going to be a tough one. Probably.
Not really. Well, if it is, it definitely is going to be a tough one to beat. Yeah,
yeah.
Definitely Hot
Fuzz.
It's
definitely Hot Fuzz on this one.
All right. Next up is Andromeda Strain versus The Sandlot. I'm going to say The Sandlot.
I'm unequivocally.
Yeah, Andromeda Strain or Bull Durham. Bull Durham for me.
Okay.
The Andromeda Strain or Marty.
Oh.
Everybody's favorite 1955 fella.
The Andromeda Strain.
Yeah, I'll pick the Andromeda Strain. How about against Key Largo? I'm going Key Largo.
I'm going Key Largo.
Andromeda Strain or The Blob, Lil Steve McQueen.
The Blob.
If it's creatures from outer space, in both cases, it's going to be The Blob for me.
Definitely.
How about against the Hound of the Baskervilles?
I'm going to say Andromeda Strain.
I am too.
Stupid dog.
That's terrible. The Andromeda Strain or Manhunt? Fritz Lang. I'm going to do Manhunt.
I am also going to do Manhunt.
Well, that puts it at 235.
Wow. It's funny. That's right at the bottom of the list. I did not intend it to be right at the bottom of the list. This was not a terrible film.
It's not at the bottom of the list. I mean, there are 18, 17 below it.
What's right below it?
Hound of the Baskervilles.
Oh, right. Yeah, see, I feel much more strongly about Hound of the Baskervilles than I do about this one.
Yeah, but it felt... I think the problem with this film is the pacing is just so poor.
Yeah.
That as interesting as the film may seem, it just, when you reflect on it, it's like, oh, I just don't want to sit through that, 40 minutes in the middle again.
Yeah. All right, what does this do for you for Letterboxd?
I gave this a 3-star. I feel like it might be more of a 2-star, though.
Wow. This was a strong meh for me.
Yeah.
I think you may be right. I was cataloging this as a 3-star because it's so middle of the road.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with 3 stars. This is a 3-star movie for me.
Okay. All right. I'll
stick
with
with
let
that.
you do that. I'm being the waffler, and I'm going 2.
All right. So that's it. That's where we are for the Andromeda Strain, the second in our disease film series. We've got a lot of great movies coming up, though. Where do we go from here? What's our next?
Well, we keep
film?
saying that. Let's hope.
Yeah.
Let's hope that it's true.
I can only say that without qualification in like 4 weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll see.
Exactly. Well, next up, I'm looking forward to this. It's Romero's The Crazies from '73, which I've actually never seen. I've only seen the remake, so I'm really curious to go back and revisit this little bit of George Romero post zombie and just get a sense of what he was doing with this one.
Yeah, I am looking forward to this one as well. I also have never seen it, and so definitely spoke too soon about all the great films coming up. The jury is officially out.
Maybe it will be.
It's gonna be a fun one to talk about. We do have before that. Oh, you and Steve went out and you saw a concert.
Yes, we did.
And we're gonna be doing you guys have a little short coming up to talk about the music of John Carpenter. Which, please, I hope, was better than the music of Gil Mellé.
If it were a concert of Gil Mellé, I don't think I would have attended. I know nothing else of his music, but if he was playing any bit of Andromeda Strain, no thank you.
So, do you want to give us a little preview? You could sing a little bit if you wanted.
I think it's just what's interesting about John Carpenter, and we talk about it, is, we've talked about 3 of his films, and his scores have never completely wowed me. I think that's fair to say. However, what became clear to me as we went to this concert is he sure knows how to put a theme together. And while he may not be able to really put a whole score together that carries an entire film, he comes up with some pretty iconic themes. And his music, it's a very, it's a well-defined musical genre that he's almost created. It's very easy to kind of pattern after it. We talked about it in Paranorman. I mean, he's one of those guys who's created a style, and I think it's pretty interesting what he's done. And it was a fun concert to see, and it was definitely fun to talk to Steve about his music and some of the stuff that he's done.
Well, I can't wait to hear it. There you go. Until then, I'm going to go to bed.
All right, I'm going to go knock back a few cans of Sterno.
I got a 1-star, Andy, and I feel a little bit conflicted. It's sort of low-hanging fruit. Nana watched this movie in 2014, says Andromeda Strain will strain your ability to stay awake. Do you see what she did there with strain? That was a little play on words. I remembered reading the book and thinking it was pretty good. I couldn't have been more wrong about the movie. I fell asleep 3 times trying to get through it. Such a bad movie. No suspense here. This was a big disappointment. And that really celebrates the general catalog of negative reviews, that it is so boring. I don't want to cheat by doing 2, but Guy follows up Nana and says, somehow they made this awesome book boring. That takes skill.
What's interesting, though, is that 69% of people who ranked it on Amazon gave it 5 stars.
Yes.
And another 20 gave it 4. So that's a whopping huge percent who rank this way up high. And mine is one of these 5 stars by Paul, who says it's the best science fiction film of all time.
Wow.
Let me qualify that remark with a few statements. Star Wars was pure fantasy in a sci-fi setting. Star Trek takes great liberties with technical accuracy, making it more space opera than real science fiction. 2001 probably qualifies as science fiction, but the main ideas are more metaphysical than anything scientific. That leaves Andromeda Strain with the title of the best hard science fiction film of all science fiction film of all time. The Andromeda Strain shows how a hard science plot can be made exciting. True, the technology is a little dated, but it only adds to the realism. I'm sure this film won't appeal to the same people who will flock to rainless action flicks like this summer's Wild Wild West. I guess we know when this was written. But if you have a brain and you're willing to use it, this film is great entertainment. I did use my brain, Paul, but I don't know. It just didn't click for me.
Where would you rank it? Where would you rank it against Wild Wild West? Just, on a lark.
Right. Come on, Paul. Let us know. I like how he has to kind of keep classifying his science fiction film until it's so narrow that Andromeda Strain is the only thing left really to be the best hard science fiction film.
Exactly.
All time.
Exactly. Involving curved hallways and slow lasers. You won't find a better film in that category. Thank you, Amazon. It is hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, I know. You're telling me. Producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great conversations.
In Season 6, our Disease Films series had adaptations like The Omega Man, based on I Am Legend, The Andromeda Strain, Children of Men, and Blindness.
I Am Legend is so much better than The Omega Man.
What about the Will Smith version?
Don't get me started.
For our This Is Real Life Jack series, we talked Black Hawk Down and Seabiscuit, some great true stories based on fantastic books.
And we had more listeners' choices like The Fly, The Emigrants, and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
You just did a series on The Fly on the Sitting in the Dark podcast. Did you read the original material?
Wasn't watching every Fly movie enough?
Our Big Betty Davis series featured adaptations like The Little Foxes, Now Voyager, All About Eve, and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
Are you calling Betty Davis big?
Only in personality and force.
She is a force to be reckoned with.
We talked about the entire The Godfather trilogy, of course. Iconic page to screen, even if it is just the one Mario Puzo book. I wonder if Coppola will ever make The Sicilian.
We also had some Zhang Yimou adaptations with Judo and Raise the Red Lantern. Absolutely gorgeous movies.
And don't forget the Hughes Brothers series with From Hell, based on the graphic novel. Brilliant material.
Kelly Reichardt gave us Wendy and Lucy and Certain Women, adapted from short stories.
Plus more Hayao Miyazaki as we tackled Howl's Moving Castle.
Find all these books and more at thenextreel.com/originals. Every purchase supports the show.
Get the full list of adapted films that we've covered at thenextreel.com/originals and start your next read today.